To help us observe National Men's Health Week, very honored to have as my guest Dr. Mark E. Richards. For 10 years, he was a White House consulting physician. He has served in leadership positions in medical and surgical societies, and he's an author. His new book is entitled, Nobody Wants You Healthy, Achieving Better Health by Avoiding the Corruptions in Modern Medical Science, a title that certainly gets your attention. Dr. Richards, really appreciate your time on this busy day.
Oh, thank you for having me, Barry.
So we've been told since we were kids, eat healthy. You are what you eat. And despite our best efforts, it turns out that we're eating a lot of plastics and chemicals. And your book says that these EDCs, these endocrine disrupting chemicals, are the root cause for most modern chronic diseases and infertility. So a word about EDCs and how they're getting into our bodies.
Yeah, well, you're right, Barry. We eat about a credit card worth of plastic a day. And EDCs, they're really hormone disruptors. So the problem is that when you start getting these EDCs or hormone disruptors into your body and they're surrounding you in your environment so you can't avoid it, you end up with severe imbalances. The plastics have a chemical in them called phthalates, and that makes plastics act like plastics. And they started going into mass production in around 1970. And what I don't think people realized at the time was that they're the most powerful hormone disruptors we've ever mass produced. So we're at the point now where they're manufacturing 200 times the toxic dose of phthalates for every man, woman, child on the planet every year.
You know, your book refers to a global testosterone deficiency and that testosterone and estrogen imbalances from EDCs are at the heart of most chronic diseases. So maybe remind us what we forgot about our high school and college biology about the role testosterone plays in our bodies, men and women.
Yeah, that's an excellent point because not only did we not remember it, but actually we were never taught it. I think I spent maybe 10 minutes in all of my med school career discussing testosterone or learning about it, which is horrendous when you consider that testosterone is the most abundant active hormone in both men and women their entire lives. So testosterone controls the most important things to keep us healthy in both sexes. The first one would be inflammation. So when you think of having plaques in your heart vessels or your arteries, that's caused by inflammation. When you think of depression, anxiety, mood disorders, that also is caused by inflammation, but just in the brain. On top of that, testosterone controls your metabolism. So to control how sugars are processed, to control whether fat is put down or used as an energy source, that's a testosterone-controlled issue too. And then finally, when you look at immunity, testosterone plays a big role in that as well as far as keeping us healthy. So when you're suppressing the hormone that controls all those systems, you end up with chronic diseases. And we've had an epidemic of chronic diseases ranging from diabetes, obesity, mood disorders, heart disease, strokes, and even breast cancer and prostate cancer, things that testosterone reduces. And now it's global. And the reason why it's global is that there's microplastic in the air of every continent. There's microplastics or phthalates in the water, 95% of tap water in the U.S., for example. It's in most of our foods. It's inundating our oceans. Little aside here, we're from the local area, so we're familiar with the Chesapeake Bay. 3 of the rivers feeding the Chesapeake Bay have bass, rockfish, that come in there, 60% of which are intersex. That means they have the organs of both males and females, and of course they can't reproduce. For any of the fishermen out there, they probably realize there are not many rockfish anymore.
Wow. So what's the future look like? I mean, plastics aren't going away. And how do we treat people for these chronic diseases?
Well, that's the million-dollar question there. You see, there's a lot of corporations that do not want this treated because chronic disease is the basis, for example, 90% of the revenue for the pharmaceutical industry globally. They made $1.4 trillion in revenue last year, and 90% of that money was made on treating chronic disease, but not preventing or curing it. And you could say the same thing for hospital systems and for health insurance companies. The ultimate treatment, which will take, I think, 100 years, is to get rid of the plastics in the environment, at least get rid of the phthalates and find something else, some non-hormone disrupting chemical that can make plastics act like plastic. But in the meantime, we don't have 100 years to wait because we have, dementia, obesity, diabetes, all sorts of things going on in both men and women, and we need to start treating them with a time-tested 80-year-old therapy, which is generic testosterone pellets that we put into the fat under just a little poke in the skin with local anesthesia. And that provides steady state availability of testosterone, which is the one thing we need. When we go to other treatments like creams or gels or injections, it spikes your testosterone way up and then way down. Sometimes in the case of creams, most of the time it doesn't get absorbed to a therapeutic level, or if it does, it's just for an hour or so. So we need to have a steady state supply of testosterone to replace what our environment is poisoning in us so that we can't make any more. And phthalates are so powerful they can be absorbed through your skin. So they're in cosmetics, they're in suntan lotions, they're in creams. They can be absorbed through your GI tract, so when you eat stuff that's contaminated with phthalates, you absorb it. And they can also be absorbed through your lungs. So we can't avoid the hormone disruption, but we can treat the deficiency that results. And as you mentioned earlier, estrogen imbalance. The phthalates have another little trick up their sleeve, and that is they can cause the enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen to overreact. So they overact, and they keep on making much too much estrogen. So you have the worst of both worlds. You have estrogen-dominant, testosterone-deficient men and women running around, which is quite unhealthy. The whole reason that I wrote Nobody Wants You Healthy was that I felt bad for my fellow physicians who honestly want people to get healthy, but they were lied to during their education. And they were lied to because the pharmaceutical industry now controls most all of medical research and publications of medical journals. So over 75% of medical and science articles in peer-reviewed journals are false. They're not reproducible in independent labs. So I wanted to make sure the doctors knew what the truth was, what's really going on, why their patients are experiencing chronic illnesses at double the normal rate, and give them the tools they need to actually make their patients better.
The book is Nobody Wants You Healthy, Achieving Better Health by Avoiding the Corruptions in Modern Medical Science. And before you go, I have to ask, being a White House consulting physician, you were in that role for 10 years. Is it okay to ask what presidents you served?
Oh, sure. I was there for approximately 8 years of the Obama administration and 2 years of the Trump administration.
And the pressure, I mean, it's one thing to have patients and their well-being, but when you've got the President of the United States, maybe just a word about a consulting physician's role and the added pressure?
Actually, it was quite enjoyable. It was an honor, of course. And as consulting physician to the White House, you really are the consultant to the President's personal physician. So the President's personal physician will pick who he wants to consult with. So my specialty is plastic surgery, which is sort of funny given the fact that my book's about plastics. So when they need my specialty expertise, they call me up. They knew about my interest in testosterone pellet therapy, so they had lots of questions about that as well. And they call you when they need you. So you could be on a ski trip and you get that phone call and, you give advice over the phone. Hopefully you don't have to go back and attend the White House personally. That's the way it went.
That's cool. Well, thank you for sharing that part of your life, too, with us. Congratulations on the new book. And again, thank you so much for the time you've taken out of your busy, busy day. Dr. Mark E. Richards.
Thank you, Barry. Have a good day.